The purpose of the various weapon programs that eventually led to the creation of the infamous 10th iteration was to create an army of mutant super soldiers. But though the program is most famous for how it backfired horribly on them due to choosing to pump the wrong Canadian full of liquid metal, the Weapon X program actually had a few successes, accruing a number of zany characters, both mutant and otherwise. I'm Ewan, this is World Culture Comics, and here's what happened to everyone who joined the Weapon X program. Number 10. Wolverine. I mean, come on, who else is it gonna be? Not really a better place to begin with than the most famous result of the Weapon X program, Logan, the Wolverine. Logan's healing factor meant that he could stay alive for significantly longer than any other human, being born in 1832 but appearing no older than 40 now. This near-perfect healing factor made him the perfect candidate for the Weapon X program, since if this dude can survive for that long and also fight in World War II and come out with no worse for wear, there probably isn't that much that they could do to kill him. Wolverine already had his claws before Weapon X, but before they were made from bone. It was the Weapon X program that coated his skeleton in the indestructible adamantium, a process that still remains in the top 5 of the most painful things that Logan has ever gone through, and bear in mind that list also includes being tortured in the bowels of hell, so pretty owie. As you can imagine, the process sends Wolverine into a blood rage, and he escapes, later joining the X-Men and never looking back. Number 9. X-23. X-Men Evolution was one of the many X-Men products made to tie into the then concurrent Fox movies, and for my money's worth, it was better than the 90s series 2, lol, fight me lol, and also its most notable addition to the mythology of the X-Men was Laura Kinney, X-23. Laura was the Weapon X program's attempt to recreate their most powerful experiments by growing their own version of Wolverine from a sample of his DNA. This resulted in a young girl with Wolverine's powers, except with 2 claws instead of 3, and 1 claw for each of her feet. Like with Logan before her, Laura was impossible to control, as the young girl was initially little more than a feral animal. But over the years, with the help of Logan teaching her right from wrong and providing the good influence that only the master of mentoring troubled teenage girls can, Laura gained humanity, her own identity, and even the mantle of Wolverine itself after Logan died. Even when he came back, Laura has retained the name of Wolverine, although she did have to give back the yellow and black color scheme for a little bit. It all evens out though, since she then got a far superior new costume to replace it with. Number 8. Deadpool. There are many reasons that the creators of the Weapon X program, at least the ones who are somehow still alive, don't deserve a single restful night's sleep for the rest of their days, but at least they gave the Marvel Universe Deadpool. Though from their perspective, that probably appears to be the worst crime of all. Deadpool started as mercenary Wade Wilson, a gun for hire who one day learned that he had inoperable cancer and was living on borrowed time. Hope was then given in the form of the Weapon X program, which promised a way to cure his cancer in exchange for some wet work with Team X. For the avoidance of all doubt, wet work is not super fun happy slide wet work, it is off the books Black Ops assassination. And well, technically they did deliver on their promise, using Wolverine's DNA to give him an endless healing factor. However, it didn't actually activate until he was murdered as part of a scheme by the head of the facility Wade was stationed at, the hatred for the man who manipulated and murdered him activating his powers and bringing him back to life. Wade, having infamous difficulty when it comes to playing well with others, of course didn't last long in Weapon X and struck out on his own to do what he was doing before, but now with the added benefit of never having to worry about dying. Number 7. Sabretooth. While the two characters initially had nothing to do with each other, with Sabretooth being introduced in Iron Fist of all comics, Wolverine and Victor Creed were eventually revealed to have been mutants in the pages of X-Men in the 80s, as well as having both been a part of Weapon X. Sabretooth was born around the same time as Wolverine and developed mutant powers just similar enough to Wolverine's to live a similarly long life, though it's left unclear which one will ultimately live longer. When he joined up with Weapon X, he initially just got the adamantium adamantium on his bone claws, a procedure that made him not as durable as Wolverine, but considering how painful the full treatment is, I highly doubt he's complaining. Unlike Wolverine though, who cut and run at the first opportunity, Sabretooth kept coming back to Weapon X for more and more upgrades, including at one point getting the same adamantium procedure as Logan. All of this with one single goal in mind, to mess with Logan at every conceivable opportunity. And no matter how many times Wolverine puts the animal down, Sabretooth always finds a way to reunite with his favorite playmate once more. Number 6. Silver Fox. Silver Fox is one of the most complicated characters in the entire Marvel Universe. One of Logan's many love interests, the Blackfoot woman was seemingly killed by Sabretooth, and in a sane world, that would be the end of it. But this is the X-Men, where straightforward narratives go to die, so of course there was more. Turns out a lot of Logan's memories were mental implants made by Weapon X as a long con gambit to solidify their control over him. One of them was his relationship with Silver Fox, who, as it turns out, was working with Weapon X the entire time. She was also a mutant herself, with very similar powers to Logan and Sabretooth. Except not really, as it turns out the memories were real the entire time. The mutant part was true, but the part about her being a part of Weapon X turned out to be a clone of her the entire time, because making one of the most popular characters deal with clone shenanigans has nothing but upsides for Marvel. Am I right? Number 5. Maverick. Not every member of the Weapon X program was a mutant. Sometimes you need a more human touch to resolve a situation, and for the leaders of Weapon X, those jobs went to the leader of the CIA's Team X, Christopher Nord, aka Maverick. Nord was born in eastern Germany when it was under communist rule. When the entire communist bloc collapsed after the Soviet Union did in the early 90s, it put Nord out of a job as a freedom fighter, so he became a mercenary, even marrying one of the nurses he met in a hospital. However, this is comics, so of course some really unpleasant stuff happens to Chris, leading him to join the Weapon X program as a field agent, giving himself the codename of Maverick. Things went well for a while, Maverick even getting his own covert ops team known as Team X, until Weapon X did the most unexpected thing that they have ever done and, gasp, horror, betrayed them to further their own ends. Fortunately, that didn't take, and Maverick sought out employment elsewhere after Team X fell apart. Currently, he's working freelance as a mercenary again. Number 4. John Wraith. The thing about recruiting a bunch of mercenaries and mutants into your shadowy organization is that you had better make sure they don't all reach the conclusion that they need to hang together or they'll hang alone. Weapon X should have remembered this sage wisdom, as it might have kept Wolverine from making another super powerful best buddy in the form of John Wraith. John, going by the codename Castro at the time, was a mutant mercenary with the power to teleport. Though due to a mix of paranoia and a love of messing with people, he had a nasty habit of not revealing he had this power unless he absolutely had to. He and Wolverine became fast friends because the longer you spend around Wolverine, the more likely it is that you will either sleep with him or become his best friend, so it was kind of inevitable. Though, considering how things ended for him, he probably spent his last moments rethinking that life choice, as he is currently dead at the hands of Wolverine when he was possessed by a horde of demons. Number 3. Mastodon. Team X was the field op created by the CIA, who also founded the Weapon X program. Team X's job was to basically handle anything that would get in the way of Weapon X being their evil selves. But don't think that made the members of Team X immune to Weapon X's treachery. Who no? Just look at poor Mastodon, who, like his more famous teammates, had memories implanted into his brain to make him more trusting of his bosses. Mastodon had an age suppression factor that was given to him by Weapon X, while his combat skills were found in firearms. His story is really the shortest and most tragic of all, as when we meet him in the then present day, Wolverine finds Mastodon's age suppressor has reversed. He dies in Jubilee's arms, aged into oblivion. Number 2. Malcolm Colcord. I can't really close out a list like this without focusing on at least a few of the people responsible for this ethical nightmare of an organization. The first of the 2 directors being showcased here is Malcolm Colcord. Malcolm started off as a security guard under the previous director's administration, managing to be one of the very few survivors of Wolverine's little freakout. The horror of watching his friends and co-workers all die vicious, horrible deaths drove him into a mad obsession that completely consumed his life. This dedication eventually put him at the top of the food chain at Weapon X, making him the new director. His administration over the Weapon X program was, rocky to say the least. His plans backfired constantly, marred by Colcord's mad obsession with bringing Wolverine a heel. His second-in-command successfully staged a coup against him, and at some point his mind just completely broke, and he started having hallucinations of Wolverine. Weapon X may be defunct at the moment, but Malcolm is not dead, so it's basically guaranteed that he'll be back eventually. And number 1, Dr. Abraham Cornelius. This list could only end with this jerk. Dr. Abraham Cornelius may not have started the Weapon X program, but he was the one who oversaw the program's most infamous experiment. Pretty much every misfortune the majority of the other people on this list experienced can be traced back to this guy being convinced that painting the bones of a man who cannot die and is infamously hard to control sounds like a genius idea. Cornelius is physically incapable of leaving Wolverine the hell alone, but while folks like Colcord were more annoying than anything else, Cornelius knows precisely how to actually harm Wolverine. This was best shown in, ironically, the story where he finally died, the death of Wolverine. While Cornelius technically succeeded in killing him by taking away his healing factor and then just sitting back while everyone who hated Logan wore him down, Logan made sure to take Abe out with him. He'll probably be back because that's how the X-Men universe works, but for now, Abraham Cornelius' legacy is nothing but death and suffering and bleeding out on the roof of a facility in the middle of the desert. What an ass. And that was what happened to everyone who joined the Weapon X program. Was there anyone we missed? Let us know in the comments below. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another Rock Culture Comics upload going forward. I've been Ewan, catch my own comics ramblings over on Twitter at EwanRuinsThings, and I will see you next time. Bye!